Hello, everybody. It is 12 noon, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Southwest Affiliate Stroke Bootcamp series. We are excited to offer this 15-week course as a way to educate stroke coordinators in key components of their role, provide tools and resources to build and maintain successful programs, and to assist in building a large network of peers. Before we get started, we would like to go over a few housekeeping items. To avoid background noise, all lines have been placed on mute. For the question portion at the end of the presentation, you may unmute your line by pressing *6 or typing in the Q&A section of WebEx. Please note, you will only be able to claim your CE credits at the end of the 15-week series on September 27th. A copy of today's slides and any handouts will be sent to you within a week of today's call. Today we have a great speaker who will be discussing all things Get With The Guidelines. Allison Capetillo is the Director of Quality and Systems Improvement for the Houston Gulf Coast Territory of the AHA. Allison graduated from UTMB School of Nursing in 2009 and began her career as a nurse in 2010. In 2014, Allison shifted her focus to health care quality and assumed the role of Stroke Program Manager at her hospital. Her experiences working for a large, comprehensive stroke center led her to the American Heart Association in 2016, where she has been able to combine her passion for data and process improvement in hopes of providing better quality of life for all patients. Outside of work, Allison enjoys traveling with her husband Adam and spending quality time with her two toddlers, Knox and Maddox. And now I will hand it over to you, Allison.
Thank you, Audrey. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm so glad to be here with you all today. And I took a peek at our attendee list, and it looks like we've got quite a group today. And I hope that you all are excited to learn a little bit about Get With The Guidelines stroke, and maybe if you already feel like you're an expert, maybe you'll take away a few extra things you didn't know. So I do hope that there's a little bit of something in here for everyone today. So with that, I'll go ahead and jump in and get started. My disclosures are, of course, I'm employed by the American Heart Association, and that this presentation does cover a few Get With The Guidelines specific measures and some of our reporting features. Today we're going to cover several things. The first thing I want to jump into is just some resources on your home page. We'll go over looking at readmissions and Get With The Guidelines, some of the reporting functionality. Then I'm going to get into how to do a data download. I know that's a tricky subject that some people have tried to dive into, and I have a lot of questions about that. So I really wanted to share with you guys how to do a data download. I also am going to be sharing some information about optional fields and what those are, how they can be used, managing code lists and what that is, looking at the coding instructions and how to navigate through, what are some tips and tricks to get through that. And then maybe some last few things you didn't know about that are hidden within the Get With The Guidelines tool that maybe you didn't know existed. So just getting started, we're going to look at your home page at the very beginning. So when you log in to Get With The Guidelines, this is the screen you'll probably see when you first log in. This is sort of the landing page, and this is where all the main resources are and just some snapshots of information about your hospital. If you look over here on the left side, you have a box that says My Hospital. I've got it highlighted in red right there. That's got just some snippets of data about your hospital. If you are participating in any of our registries, all of the information about the registries will be found right here. So you have your total number of stroke records that are entered, and I think I used a sample site. Of course, I'm not going to say who it is, but this site had 186 records plugged in, and they started in 2012. If you look over here on the right side under Training, you've got a box up here that I've circled where it says Stroke. If you have never looked at any of these trainings, I highly recommend that you do. Even if you're a seasoned Get With The Guidelines user, there are some really neat features that they talk about in these videos. They're about 30 minutes to an hour depending, and you could easily just sit and look at it over lunch if you wanted to one day. But these are some nice little videos that have been put together by Quintiles, and it really does do a good job of taking you through the registry and showing you all the features. So if you haven't taken a look at that before, I definitely recommend that. Down below, you've got a section here called Snapshot. And, oh, I apologize, we're getting some background noise. There's a section here called Snapshot, and what I wanted to really highlight here was the total number of records that have been entered in to Get With The Guidelines stroke thus far. And I pulled this today, so this actually is current, this is updated, we're looking at a little over 5.3 million records right now. So that's really an amazing feat. Get with the Guidelines Stroke has been around for quite some time, but I just think that's really an amazing number of records that have been entered, and says a lot about how we can use this information for research purposes. And then just looking down toward the bottom, there's a section here that says My Reports. And I will show a few more of these features in the section later, including this one I have circled, which is the Get with the Guidelines Stroke on-demand trend report, and just show you a little bit about how you can use that in your program. The next section I'm going to go into is some of the resources that are located in the toolbox. If you look here, I have a arrow pointing to a little toolkit. It kind of looks like a filing cabinet or a suitcase. This icon on your desktop, on your home page here, is full of all kinds of resources, and I'll go into more of them later, but I just wanted you to know where this is. This is such an important feature. If you're not used to getting in and playing around with Get with the Guidelines, this is probably my most frequently visited section of the tool. I'm always trying to go in and print out blank forms or research something in the coding instructions, or maybe look at an inclusion criteria for a measure. This is where I go to do that. So just definitely something to remember when you're trying to find an answer to a question. The next section, if you are on your home page and you scroll towards the bottom more, there's a whole section called Resources. And the first thing actually I want to highlight is right above that, there's a section called My Hospital Characteristics. I get tons of emails all the time from people asking, how do I update my billing contact person? Or how do I change my telestroke status and Get with the Guidelines? Or how do I show that I'm doing endovascular procedures and Get with the Guidelines? These are all things you can do in the stroke site characteristics. So if you go into your tool and open up that stroke site characteristics section, you can update all kinds of information for your account, and they will be saved. So, for example, if you are a provider or receiver of telestroke services, you may want to indicate that, and all of a sudden, once you turn that feature on, it will start showing up in your collection tool. So that way you'll be able to indicate, when did we activate telestroke, or when did we hear from the neurologist, and so on. Same thing with endovascular capabilities. If you are all of a sudden now able to provide endovascular services, you're going to want to turn on the Advanced Stroke Care tab so that you have the ability to capture the data pertinent to mechanical endovascular reperfusion. And I know for some of the newer measures that are coming out for Joint Commission, that's going to be really important for some of our sites. The next thing I want to show you guys is under the resources section, there's several things in here that may be important to you, such as award recognition criteria. I get questions all the time about how do I know if I'm recognized for an award, or how do I calculate that, how do I find out? And the criteria for our awards is listed in here. You have a highlight right here, award recognition criteria. The next thing I would like to show you is right here, a little bit further down, the Stroke Connection magazine. If you are looking for resources for your patients or for family members, this is a great tool. This is a publication that's put out, I believe, once a quarter by the American Heart Association, and it's both an online digital magazine and a paper magazine. So you can order copies, or you can just refer people directly to the website. But there's always great stories about survival stories. There's, how to deal with after the stroke. There's actually a great network of survivors that people can log into if they want to be a part of like an online community. So this is a really great tool. I highly recommend taking a look at it. All of the issues are archived through that link, so you can do the Stroke Connection magazine link and go straight there, and you can look at the archived issues as well. And then last but not least, I wanted to point out this other feature that it gets forgotten about, and it's actually something that's really handy. Up here, there's a section that says Get with the Guidelines General Best Practices Center. If you click on that, it'll take you to a listing of a bunch of different tools, but you can specifically select the ones that are for stroke. This is where we've highlighted some of our top performing hospitals in the country. We've highlighted things like ED workflows. So if you're needing,
Hey, Alice, when you cut out, One moment, she might be having some connectivity issues.
Hi, everybody. I apologize. I hope that y'all are all still on. I just got disconnected. That's what cell phones do, I suppose. Anyway, let me jump back in. So on the best practices, we have identified some best practices from across the country. But one of the things I thought was really neat in there is there's actually ability to look at some stroke coordinator job descriptions. I get asked a lot of times if we have examples of stroke coordinator job descriptions, especially for newer hospitals that are coming on board or trying to develop their stroke program, and they need to learn what does that job description look like. And so if you're ever looking for one, we have one listed, and certainly we as your quality directors can also help you with that, locating that file as well. So just wanted to point that out that that's available to you. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to jump into is utilizing your patient grid. And for those who may not know what the patient grid is, that is essentially just your patient list. All of the patients you have entered into the PMT, which is Patient Management Tool, we call that shorthand for our Get With the Guidelines tool. But some of the features you may not know that you can use is to track readmission. And for sites where that's a priority, we have heard recently of some more hospitals coming on that are interested in looking at 30-day readmissions for their stroke patient population. And this might be primarily important in some of your TIA cases where you're having patients coming in with a TIA and you are wanting to be able to see if they're coming back within 30 days for a stroke or something else, some other stroke-related event. And so what you can do is actually utilize this feature where it says next admission. Once you've entered a patient in and assigned a patient ID number to them, you have the ability to capture all of their admissions tied to that same ID. Now the trick here is, and what's important to remember is that it only works if you're using the same patient ID every time. If you are creating a new patient ID for every encounter, then this won't work. This won't be a feature that really will be useful to you. But I do recommend if you're wanting to sort of track how often or, if patients are coming back frequently, then this might be something you would want to utilize. Okay, the next thing I'm going to show you are some of the reports that are built in, and this is probably going to be the bulk of our presentation today. But how do you navigate through the various tools and the different reporting features that are built in to get with the guidelines? So this very first screen, this is sort of how you access from the very beginning. If you're logged into the home page, you want to click on the little icon that looks like a bar graph, and I've got it labeled as number 1, click here. You're going to go to that little bar graph, and this next box is going to open up, and it's this screen with a listing of different types of reports. Probably where you're going to spend the majority of your time is in the section called Configurable Measure Reports. These are sort of our pre-built canned reports, if you will. They have, I think, probably cover most of what you'll need as a stroke coordinator to do any kind of reporting. But in case you are not able to get what you need out of that, we do have some customization abilities with this tool. You can save different reports based on filters or things that you've put on there, and you can create predefined reports, or I can show you how to do a data download, which we'll get to a little bit later. So just before we get started, I kind of wanted to show you guys what one of the reports looks like in case you've never pulled these out or looked at them, just what the anatomy is, how to identify all the different parts of the report. Of course, number 1, we've got the report title at the very top. This is the measure title. So if you want to look at a certain measure, that's where you're going to see the title. The second thing you'll see is underneath that is going to be a description of what that measure is. So every report gives a nice little quick snippet of what's included in there, so you'll at least be able to recognize it. The third thing, of course, is your time period, what you've selected as far as the time window that you want to look at. And then the fourth thing would be the site. It will be your site, of course. And I want to make sure everybody notices, too. You see this little 5-digit code right here in parentheses. That is your site ID number. I know a lot of times people will email me and ask me and say, how do I know what my site ID number is? That's how you find it. It's the little 5-digit number in parentheses on all of your reports. So definitely keep that handy. It's something that we use to identify sites, especially if there are any blinded reports that we do. the number can be something that we can see, but not, of course, not everybody knows what everyone else's number is. Number 5, of course, at the bottom is going to be your x-axis, and that's going to show you the different time aliquots you have. Number 6 is your color code key. So if you have reports where there's multiple colors of bars on your bar chart, then you'll want to know exactly what those are. Number 7 is, of course, your data chart down at the bottom. It'll show you all of your numerators and denominators for each time period. And lastly, at the very bottom, you'll have a time and date stamp for the report. So those are handy if you're ever trying to look back and you want to see what, when did I pull this report? Maybe you keep record of them in a binder of some kind. It helps you to know when you pulled that. Okay, so like I said, you're going to probably spend the majority of your time in this Configurable Measures report. So I put this here, of course, to say this is where you're going to go to get into some of these main reports. As an example, I want to go in and I'm going to do a demo really quick of how to pull the reports that we look at for award recognition. These are probably our most frequently accessed reports, and I want to show them to you because they are in a little bit of an abbreviated form, and people often ask me, what in the world do these letters stand for? I don't even know what these are. And so they just don't run them because they don't know what they are. Just as a reminder to kind of show you guys what these are, the Performance Achievement Award set right here is the one we look at when we're trying to determine if a hospital is meeting bronze, silver, or gold level recognition. And as a reminder, that's the 7 measures that we look at that you have to be at 85% or higher in all 7 categories in order to get that gold or silver level of recognition. Now, if you're trying to get the plus to add on to that, those are based off what we call the quality measures. And these are a set of 8 different measures, 8 different categories, and you'll need to be at 75% or higher in 5 out of the 8 categories. Okay, I'm going to jump right in here. I put this in here so that when we send these slides out, you guys will have a direct link into the PMT, but I've actually already got it open, so I'm just going to flip my screen here just a second. I hope everybody can see. I'm in our demo site right now. So I apologize, the data in here may not be super exciting, but at least it'll give us an idea of what we've got to work with. So I'm going to get in our Configurable Measures report menu here. And I'd like to set our timeline, I think, to 2017. So we can maybe look at last year and see how we looked. And under this menu right here that says Get with the Guidelines Standard Measures, we're going to select in the drop-down this Get with the Guidelines Performance Achievement Award Set. And this is the one I said we use pretty frequently. It's all of the measures that are included in this achievement category. So all 7 of these measures are kind of bundled into one set so that you don't have to run them individually. And that sort of just saves you some time. And for this example, I'm just going to remain on my hospital. So I'm only looking at myself. And to show you some of the features, I wanted to show you the display options. And one of the things I like to do is to put similar measures on the same graph. It makes it a little bit easier when we're just trying to look at all of the measures across the board to have them all in one chart rather than individual measures, one graph per measure. That makes for quite a lengthy report. And for this report, I would also like to display the achievement goal. The achievement goal is 85%, if you recall. Those are the 7 measures that you need to meet 85% in. And of course, since it's the achievement award, you want to see the achievement goal. And click Generate Report. And once I've done that, my screen will pop up here and we'll be able to see just a little bit better. I'm going to reduce this down just a smidge so you can see everything at once. And as you can see, my pretend hospital is not doing so fantastic. We've got some work to do, but it gives you an idea. You can see all of the different bars for each of the measures. They're color-coded down here, so you can identify which measure it's indicating. And then you can see really quickly, because you put this 85% benchmarker on here, you can see where you're meeting your goal and where you're not. So it looks like we've got some work to do in the anti-coag measure, the smoking cessation measure, and the statin prescribed to discharge. It looks like we're missing a measure here, which is early antithrombotics. That would indicate we either A, don't have any patients in that measure, or we just didn't need it. And it looks like we didn't need it. We had one patient in the measure, but we didn't need it, so there's no bar visible. So that gives you an idea really quickly of how to pull that up, and that's, again, all the measures that you would need to look at for your bronze, silver, or gold level recognition. The next thing I would show you is the plus part of the measure. So that's the next one. If you look down here under the additional measure groups, you've got the Get with the Guidelines stroke quality measures. These are the plus measures. Oh, I apologize. Do we have a question? Oh, okay. So these are the Get with the Guidelines stroke quality measures. And I'm going to change up my display options just a little bit. This one, again, I want to keep the similar measures on the same graph because I don't want to see an individual bar chart for every measure. I would like to have them all on one graph. But I'm going to change this achievement goal display to the plus goal because I want to move that bar. I want to put that line at 75% rather than 85%. And I'm going to generate the report. And again, you can see, of course, this is my pretend hospital, if you'll recall, so I apologize. There are definitely some work to do. We need to get 5 out of the 8 measures at 75%, and looks like we're only getting 1. So as you can see here in the arrive by 3.5, treat by 4.5, we're doing pretty good, but we definitely need some work in these other areas, such as aphasia screening, stroke education, and so on. But anyway, this is just a really quick way for you guys to jump in. If you ever want to see how you're trending, you can run your report year to date, you can run it by quarter, whichever is easier for you. My favorite way to do it, honestly, is year to date. I think that's the most accurate representation. If you're trying to see how you're trending, you would just set your timeline at the beginning of the year. Okay, let's jump back into my slides really quick. Okay. So the next one I would show you, I know some of you are interested in the honor roll, the Target Stroke Honor Roll, which is the award you would get if you're looking at door to needle. These are the Honor Roll Elite Plus, and just plain Honor Roll categories. And I've kind of tried to block them out. I think this is one of the more complicated awards to try to understand and what the measures are. So I tried to make a little chart here that I thought would be helpful if you're trying to understand what the different categories are. And so as you can see, when you run this report, you would, of course, go to Configurable Measure Report. And there's a stroke set called Get with the Guidelines Target Stroke Set. And it includes all of the reports you would need to gather this information. And I can show you guys just one second what that would look like. But I just want to go really quickly. If you're looking at Target Stroke Honor Roll, that would indicate that you're meeting door to needle in under 60 minutes in at least 50% of your cases. If you've met it at least 75% of your cases, then you would bump up to the next category called Honor Roll Elite. And then last but not least, the highest level award for Honor Roll is the Target Stroke Honor Roll Elite Plus. That would indicate 75% compliance in your door to needle in under 60 minutes, in addition to 50% or greater compliance in your door to needle of 45 minutes or less. And I would mention the last thing, this one award does require that you have a minimum of 6 patients given TPA annually. So I do realize that that's a little bit difficult for some of our smaller hospitals to meet, but we do have that benchmark in there as a requirement. So just really quickly, I wanted to show you where that report's located. If you pull this additional measure groups, you have one here, it says Target Stroke Set. Enhance that just a little bit. I know it's hard to see on your screen probably. And for this one, I would just generate the report. There really isn't any need to share the measures on similar graphs or put a benchmark on this one. So this has actually got a lot of information in it, and sometimes I just run this report because I think it's got a lot of really good information. It's got a diagnosis grouping here, so you can see where your different patient categories are. If you've got, mostly you're gonna have ischemic strokes, obviously. Like how many TIAs do you have, ICHs, subarachnoids, and so on. The next thing, of course, is your thrombolytic therapies. It'll tell you how many thrombolytic patients you're doing, if you're doing TPA, if you're doing catheter-based reperfusion. Really good information to have. And of course, your TPA in 60 minutes or less. In our pretend hospital here, we are at 50%, so we would be meeting the requirement for honor roll. And it looks like we have just hit the minimum of 6 patients in our denominator here. So we, of course, are looking at the denominator. And for our time to IV thrombolytic in 45 minutes, we are hitting 50% as well. But because we have not hit greater than 75%, we wouldn't be eligible for the Honor Roll Elite Plus award. And just a really quick snapshot of where we look at with our ride by 2, treat by 3. We are just under that 85% mark, so that's something we would need to work on. And then if we want to look at the histogram of our thrombolytic therapy times, where are we falling in? It looks like majority of the time we're falling in this 41 to 50 minute group here. And if you see, these are broken down into 10-minute time increments, so you can kind of see where your majority of your patients are falling. It looks like here we've got a couple of outliers that were in the greater than 150-minute category. So if I were an astute stroke coordinator, I would maybe want to go and drill down on this category here and see what the reasons were for delay. If we had acceptable or unacceptable reasons for delay, and then take that back to my stroke team to find out what we can do to prevent that from happening in the future. Okay, let me jump back to my slides really quick. All right, so the next thing I wanted to show you guys is, we've looked at it briefly in that target stroke group, but there's that report that's called Thrombolytic Therapies, and you can run this report by itself. You don't have to run it as part of the stroke honor roll group. So if you ever want to just run this report, it'll tell you again how many of each type of thrombolytic therapy are you doing in a given time period. And if you're ever wanting to look at your TPA treatment rate, and this is a raw treatment rate, remember, this is just total number of patients treated with that particular type of treatment over the total number of ischemic strokes. There's a little bit of controversy about that treatment rate, and would it be more realistic if we were pulling out patients who had exclusion criteria, like for not getting that treatment? And probably so, but for right now, the standard that we kind of look at is this treatment rate, so just the raw treatment rate. And I would say generally most hospitals will see a treatment rate between 10 and 20%. We may have a few outliers that go below that or above that, just depending on how aggressive you are. But the national treatment rate right now, and I pulled this yesterday, just thought I'd get with the guidelines, and you guys can run this too anytime if you ever want to go in and just look at the treatment rate for the entire nation. You can run a benchmark and see what the treatment rate is for all hospitals. That would be for across the country, everyone who's participating. And right now it was sitting at 11.6%, so of course right there in the middle of that 10 to 20% range. But anyway, I just wanted to show you guys, and I think this is from our demo site, of course, so this is not very accurate. When you only have one patient in the denominator, it doesn't make for very accurate numbers. But 50%, of course, is probably not a very realistic treatment rate. It would be ideal, but not very realistic. So I think just if you're a stroke coordinator and you're wanting to monitor something like this, or you're being asked by your leadership at your hospital, what is our treatment rate right now? This is where you can go to find that. So the next thing I get asked a lot is, how do I drill down on my patients? How do I find out which patients did not meet a measure? Or how do I maybe go down a little bit deeper into my data to find out the answer to something that I'm looking for? And there's a couple of different ways to do that. I'm going to show you probably the easier way to get to this information, which is through the patient records listing. To do this, of course, would select a measure that you want to look at. And I used, for the example here, the Arrive by 2, Treat by 3 measure. I think that's the one I see most commonly that hospitals tend to struggle with. This one you can run just out of the Get With the Guidelines measure grouping, or you can run it out of your, I'm going to flip back really fast. I want to show you all just really fast where this is. In this achievement group right here, you'll see that the Arrive by 2, Treat by 3. So you can run it by itself, and this is the individual report. And of course right here, I would change the format from bar chart to patient records, because I want to see which patients fell in that category. And so when I go back, I've selected patient records, and I've told it to generate the file, which we'll do here. Let's see, I want to see what this report looks like. It's going to pop up a screen that's just a bunch of patients listed here. And you can do a couple of different things. If you want to just stay in the tool, that's completely fine. You don't have to export it to Excel. I will say when you're dealing with a whole lot of patients in one measure, it makes it a little easier if you export to Excel. But in this case, we're only looking at 14 patients. That's not a whole lot. So I don't really think we have to pull it into Excel. But if you'll see what I just did here, I clicked this little button that says Show Filters. And I want to see of the patients in this measure, which ones were included in the results. So we click on Included. And I want to see, were they not in the numerator? And for those who may be a little confused as to what I'm saying, the included in results would tell me, did that patient fall into the denominator? Were they in the bucket for this measure? Did they meet the inclusion criteria? So, of course, we want to see, yes, they met that inclusion criteria, but if they weren't in the numerator would tell us whether or not they met the criteria for the measure. Did they actually meet what that measure was asking? We want to say, no, these were the ones that did not meet the measure criteria. So, again, included in the bucket, but not meeting the measure criteria. And so it looks like we had just one patient. And because I'm staying in this tool right here within the PMT, I can go directly into that patient's chart just by clicking on their patient ID. And really quickly, you can go back in there and you can see, did we make an abstraction error? Did we maybe forget to put in a reason for delay or a reason for not giving? Did we, there's any number of things that could happen. Or maybe you did truly have a fallout in your hospital and view that this is an opportunity for improvement. Maybe this is something you want to take back to your stroke team. So I would just encourage you to sort of utilize that function of pulling your fallouts for different measures and knowing where your weaknesses are. You can kind of sometimes look back and see trends and notice, did I, for the last year, did we have a problem with dysphagia screening? Maybe we're not doing it consistently. If we're not doing it consistently, why not? So just starting to ask yourself these questions, that can be really helpful. I apologize for clearing my throat. I'm battling a little bit of a cold here. And I would just point out, I'm going to show you a quick snapshot on the next page here. This is what it looks like when you pull that same list out in Excel. The first thing you would have to do is enable the editing, because it's going to pull it into just a read-only version. And then the next thing you would need to do is to highlight this first row, and you would want to apply your filters, and then do the same thing we did in the tool. You would want to select, are they included in the measure? And then once you've selected included, you would want to say, no, they're not in the numerator. And again, it'll get you to the same place. You'll see exactly which patient it is that's falling out. And as a sidebar, for the hospitals that are in our Southwest affiliate, you'll notice that your quality team here at the AHA, we send you guys out a report each quarter with the measures and where you are standing with each measure. And then we try to also include lists of the actual cases that did not meet the measures so that you can go back and look at them. We just try to help you guys out a little bit with pulling those lists. Okay, the next thing I'm going to jump into is benchmarking. And I just wanted to quickly highlight this function. I get a lot of questions about how can I see how I compare to other people. It's really easy to do. You have an entire list. Each site's going to be a little different with the number of benchmarks that they have. This is all based off of the criteria you give us when you sign on to get with the guidelines. So you guys tell us how many beds you have at your hospital. You tell us what state you're located in, of course. If you're in a particular system of care grouping that we have a benchmark already made for, we'll add that. If you're a Joint Commission hospital, we'll add a benchmark group for that. So we have several different ones that are already created, and you'll see them pop up. Now, if you know of a particular benchmark group that you want to be added to, we can also help you with that. So right here, I just wanted to show you on the right, this is what it looks like when you populate a measure. This is an individual measure report, but I've populated this one to show what my hospital, and I had to use a real hospital for this in order to get something accurate. That's why you see this is blanked out. But my hospital, and I use Texas for this measure, so I can see what they look like compared against Texas. And then here in the Houston area, we have our RAC, which is our local kind of regional system of care. The RAC is the other benchmark I compared against. So the hospital can quickly see there in red, how do they compare against the region and the state? And it just kind of gives them a really quick glance of what that looks like. These are great reports to use for your stroke team and your hospital leadership. Leadership always loves to see how do we look compared to other people or other parts of the country, other markets, or similar hospitals. So really great to use with your leadership. The next thing we're going to talk about really quickly is filters. This is a feature in your configurable measure reports that you might have noticed, or maybe you've even played around with it a time or two. Let me jump back into the reports really quick. And there's a whole lot of functionality built into the filters category, but I wanted to show you what it looks like. You do have to expand it. These are show hide features, so you actually have to expand it out, and you can then see all the different options you have to filter reports. Remember, when you filter, it's going to only pull out the cases that apply to the criteria you've selected. I'm going to get rid of this really fast. And I've just kind of done some screenshots here, but these are some of the options you might see. You have the ability to filter by day of the week. You can filter by physician as long as you're including the physician names. This is a feature that you have control over, so I would definitely recommend you use that if you can. The department, you can filter by demographic, you can filter by the discharge disposition, arrival method, final diagnosis, and so on. So I'm going to show you really quickly just an example of what it looks like to do a filter. And in this example, I've used the TPA times, and I've filtered it by day of the week. And if you notice, you have to hold down control, but you can select all the different days of the week and then compare the selections so that we can see a side-by-side comparison. And this is what it looks like when you populate that report. And of course, again, I had to use a real hospital because our pretend hospital does not have a great data set in it to do this with. But this works really well in some of our high-volume hospitals that have a large TPA population. You can quickly see where you have some maybe inefficiencies, I would say. If you are looking at your ED workflow or whatever your TPA workflow is, if you want to pull it out by day of the week, and this is a little surprising, sometimes you see slower times on weekends, but in this case, it seems like Monday was the tricky day of the week for this hospital. And so based on this information, I can look at this and say, okay, wow, we're having some difficulties on Monday. So what is the deal with Monday? Is that a change day for certain physicians, or what is it on Mondays that sticks out that I can look into at my hospital? So again, just using these reports to sort of start asking yourself questions and then to drill down into that data even further. The next thing I want to show you all is the ability to save frequently used reports. And this can be helpful when you've utilized all of your tools here at your hands, and you've maybe created something really unique that you feel like is something you want to be able to go back to on a routine basis. And the one example I like to use is report cards. Some hospitals like to create report cards, and one way you can do that is if you want to do like physician level report cards, for example, you can select a time period, say you want to do quarterly, and you want to show a particular physician, hey, here's your TPA times for the first quarter, if they're wanting to look at that. Or maybe you want to do a comparison and you want to show all of your physicians side by side. You could select, let's see, I like to do TPA in under 60 minutes, just as a general rule here. And I could go down, and I've got my physicians here. And again, these are just pretend physicians. And I can select Dr. Johnson. And I can just populate that report. Let's hope in this case Dr. Johnson gave TPA in first quarter. it may not pop up with anything, but, and lo and behold, it did not. But anywho, I just wanted to show you all so you could get the idea that if Dr. Jensen had provided TPA in first quarter, you would have data here to show how often did he give it in under 60 minutes. So that's that example. Maybe I decide that this is something I want to show Dr. Jensen every quarter. This is something that would be valuable to him. Then I can go, whoops, I apologize, all the way back down here to the bottom, and you have this button here that says Save the Report Options. And I can say Save as Dr. Jensen Quarterly TPA Report. And I can save that. Now, you'll see a little pop-up that says it's been saved, and the report, you can access this by going to the Predefined Reports link under the Reports tab. So let me just show you really quickly where that would be. Predefined Measure Reports here. And you'll see at the top of the list here, I've got Dr. Jensen Quarterly TPA Report. So that's just a quick way, if you're ever wanting to do any sort of repetitive reports like that, that you can save your particular features. Okay. So moving on into understanding your patient population, you have a whole bunch of information at your hands here in this tool, and I'm just going to show you some of the examples of that. In this drop-down menu of the standard measures, you've got a whole bunch of descriptive measures, and these are really good at just identifying different pieces of your patient population. So, of course, you see age, diagnosis, gender, length of stay, so on and so forth. I'm just going to show you a few examples of these. And, of course, you see they're broken out into different groupings here. So you've got an 18 to 45 category, 46 to 65, and so on. So you can sort of see what's the majority of your patients, which group are they falling into. And this can help you as a stroke coordinator to identify, you know, first of all, what is the primary age group we're targeting here, and then where do I need to focus my education? You know, do I need to focus more on my elderly population, or maybe we're having an influx of younger patients and I need to figure out a way to get to those patients? How do I get to that population of the community and talk to them? If you're wanting to see disparities between gender, you can of course look at that. And race, this can be helpful in identifying if there's maybe language barriers or there's education needs in a certain population in your community that maybe isn't getting the education it needs. Population medical history, I think this is really great information to share with your physicians. We, of course, are collecting the patient's medical history in the PMT, and this is the way that it'll kind of spit it back out. It'll tell you what the, I guess, pre-existing conditions are for each of your patients and where the majority of those are falling. So in this example, you can see a lot of patients with AFib and hypertension. And of course, we know those are probably the most common things, so it's important to know that in your community. Maybe you have a lot of history of smoking in your community, and that's really important for you to tackle. It would show that. Arrival mode, I think this is also really great information when you're thinking about how your patients are coming into the hospital. If you're in a really rural area, you may see more patients that are coming in their own vehicle. If you're in a really urban area, you might see the majority of your patients coming in with an ambulance. So it's just important if you're an area that focuses more on EMS, if you need to work on enhancing those relationships, or maybe you're in an area that's really competitive. I know in the Houston market, it's really competitive down here. We have a lot of hospitals. Everybody's a stroke center. The hospitals are all sort of competing for business, and it's really important that they stay in touch with their EMS partners, that they're on good terms with them, and that they're working together to sort of create that system of care and making sure that they're all on the same page. Again, how long is it taking patients to get to the hospital? This is so important. It is really apparent when you have a lot of patients that are coming in outside the window and are not getting TPA. It drives your treatment rate down, and it can be really impactful on your overall numbers and your outcomes in your area, in your community. So definitely something to consider when you're thinking about how long is it taking people to get in? Are there barriers to them getting to the hospital? If so, why? What can we do to improve that? Or maybe they just don't know. Maybe there's just an education gap there. Using reports to evaluate program growth. I like to talk about this a little bit, and actually I think this sort of piggybacks on the presentation that was done last week by Laura Griffin about navigating the C-suite. So for some of you who were on that call last week, Laura Griffin gave a really great presentation on talking with your hospital leadership and how to get them on the same page as you, and then also to have them be on your side and help you when you're looking at growing your stroke program. But I wanted to point out a couple of different things you might consider. You have the ability to look at length of stay over time in your tool, and this can be really valuable when you're considering staffing needs. Maybe as a stroke coordinator, you're being tasked with figuring out why we're shorthanded all the time, or why do we never seem to have enough beds, or never enough nurses to cover the TPA patients we have, or the thrombectomy patients that you have. This is a really good way to look at over time. Are you seeing a decrease or an increase in length of stay? If so, how can you leverage that information? And by utilizing, this is a resource that Laura sent out. This is the CMS length of stay waiting table. And I put the link in here as well. This is the link she sent me. And I just highlighted where she's identified some of the codes that apply to ischemic stroke, and these would be patients that are treated with a thrombolytic agent. And what she's done, and we appreciate her so much for doing this, is adding the conversion factor. This changes on a yearly basis, but she has shown us that you can sort of quickly identify for your CMS patients, your Medicare and Medicaid patients, what the total cost would be for a reimbursement of the hospital. And this is great to share with your leadership if you're trying to just give them a rough idea of, over time we've seen an increased cost savings, or maybe we've seen an increased income flow generated because we've reduced our length of stay. So that's just really important for stroke coordinators, maybe your more seasoned stroke coordinators, to try to look at and sort of understand. This is a quick chart we did for a hospital group here in Houston, and I blocked out the names, of course, but we did this based off of just a rough average. An RN making $44.56 per hour, that might be a little high, but that's also inclusive of benefits. So we have to consider that an RN who has full benefits is going to be a little bit more expensive at a 1-to-5 patient ratio. And in looking at their length of stay decrease over time, what was the cost savings that equated to for that hospital? And so when you totaled it all up, overall this hospital was realizing about $170,000 in savings. And I know that's not a lot to the hospital maybe overall, but in terms of a stroke program, that can be an FTE. So that's just something to really think about when you're talking about resources and things that you may need as a stroke coordinator. How can you talk numbers and dollars to your leadership? If you're wanting to evaluate improvement over time, I highly recommend using the Defect-Free Care Report. And I'm going to flip back to our tool here just one second. I want to show you where this is located because it's in a little bit different place. And I'll show you why that's important in just one second. Okay, so if you look down here at the very bottom, I'm in this Get with the Guidelines Standard Measures dropdown. And at the very bottom, there's this Defect-Free Measures, Get with the Guideline PAA. So again, that's that a Performance Achievement Award set. Those are the measures that we are looking at for performance. But we want to see defect-free. And what that means, I'm going to pop back over here and show you that this is the example of what it comes out like. It looks like it's more of a line graph. And this is important because you're looking at over time how we improved. And what defect-free is, I apologize, I'm going to flip to the next one because I didn't realize I forgot to block out a page there. Defect-free would indicate that a hospital, let's see here, I'm going to go yearly. Let's go back 5 or 6 years just to see. I'm going to do a line chart because it's a little easier to see here. And generate. Defect-free, again, this is not a great example just because we have a very small data set. Defect-free is the number of patients who met every measure that would apply to them. So, of course, if a patient doesn't need smoking cessation or if a patient doesn't need a statin, they're not going to be included in that measure, and therefore it won't count against you. So what this is showing you is if you are doing everything you should be doing 100% of the time, then you should be at 100% for all of your years. But we know that's probably not accurate, so you're probably going to see some fluctuation over time. But what you would like to see ultimately is a trend upward. You would like to see that, maybe several years ago we were only doing everything we should be doing 70% of the time, but now we're getting closer to 100. This is really important to leadership. When you talk to hospital leadership and you say things like defect-free, immediately they know what that means. So that's really a good tool to have in your arsenal there. So quickly, I'm going to run into data downloads. I want to show you guys, I put a screenshot up here of just the step-by-step of what you would do to get to the data download, but I also want to refer you to a handout that you should have access to. If we don't have it on the WebEx, we will be sending it out shortly. But I've included instructions, detailed step-by-step instructions on how to do a data download to identify your mild and rapidly improving patients. And this would be important if you're trying to look at patients that maybe could have gotten TPA but were not given TPA due to being mild or rapidly improving. And this would be great because what we've done is identify their discharge disposition, their arrival location, where they were when the stroke symptoms started. Did they come from home? And then also you can look at, you could add, if you wanted to, you could add physician, or you could add their NIH stroke scale so that you can sort of create a story, if you will, with your data. And in order to do this, I'm going to flip back in just one second to show you the steps here. You would go right here to the download tab. If you've never played with this feature, you should definitely get in there and play with it. It won't break anything, I promise. And from the select forms drop down, you're going to select stroke. And then you would, of course, set your time period so that you can see, oops, I apologize. I skipped a step here. You're actually going to want to select your individual fields next. So just for time's sake, I'm going to quickly go in and do pick some different ones. We're not going to do anything step-by-step today. And if I wanted to save this, of course, I could take that opportunity to save it, and I would just, call it whatever I wanted. Hit save so that it would save whatever options I've selected in this individual field. And you'll see that they were frozen. Once I did that, it froze them. And now I can select my date range and put in whatever time period I want. Now, the most important thing that I would show you right here is that you want to select the as descriptive radio button and the single field multi-select format. This is going to be important when it populates your Excel file. And the next thing you would want to do is, of course, generate the download file. This can take a minute because it is actively having to go in and pull raw data from your file. It takes just a minute. Depending on how large the file is, sometimes it'll pop up quickly, and if you will try, we'll see if it works. Oh, it worked. If I clicked on the download tab again, it'll actually just refresh your screen, and sometimes it'll pop up really quickly. So there's the link right here. It's my completed download request. And you'll see it has a time and date stamp, so that's helpful. And once I download that file, you'll see it comes up in a zip format. And once I've opened it, you're going to see a whole bunch of files. The one you're going to need is just labeled simply stroke. I know that seems very silly, but it's the one, this is the only one you're ever really going to need to utilize out of this download file. You'll just need the one that says stroke, and it will be the largest file. Because this is a small one, it's only, I think it's 6 kilobytes, so not very big, but it will always be the largest file out of all of them. And you would just, of course, open it just like you always do. And, oh, I'm sorry. It does open as a CSV, I will point out. So when you do save it at some point, you would have to save as an Excel file just for future use. Most likely, most of you don't work in CSV files. But of course, you'll see here you've got some information at the ready. This is your, of course, site ID. This is your patient ID. You can go in and see really quickly what the patient ID was. And we can get in here, and if you ever want a more detailed tutorial, I'm happy to jump on with some of you and do that. But we can always come in here, and you can just slice and dice your data. I've applied my filters, and I can search by, I've pulled one that appears to be an insurance grouping, but if you wanted to, you could drill down to, how many of my patients are Medicare patients. And you could find out what you've got there. So as you can see, you've got some flexibility to pull out more detailed information when you do it this way. And let me get back here to my slides. I want to jump in quickly to the optional fields. I get lots of questions about these as well, and I know we're running short on time, so I'm going to try to move quickly. But the optional fields, you have 10 different free text fields you can use. You have 2 that can be configured with a drop-down feature. Of course, you have time and date stamps that you can use as well. These can be used however you want, but I would just recommend that whatever you choose to do with a field, make sure you stay consistent with it. That's important, because when you go back to run the report on the data that you've put in there, it's not going to make any sense if you all of a sudden switched gears in the middle of the year and started using that same field for something different. So just something to keep in mind. And I put a listing here you can look at on your own time of what some other hospitals are using these free text fields for, if you want to just are curious. Managing code lists, I've also included a handout for you of how to do this. Any feature you see in the Get With the Guidelines tool that features a drop-down, so for example, if a patient was transferred to your hospital from a different hospital name, from an EMS agency, if you want to configure these optional fields 11 and 12, you can do that, or if you want to add a physician. All of those can be done with this Managing Code List feature. And of course, I've included the handout how to add, edit, or delete code lists and Get With the Guidelines. So that's going to be a very helpful tool for you if you are trying to do some more customized things and Get With the Guidelines. Navigating the coding instructions, just to point out, there's a couple of ways to access these. You can do it through the resources icon on your home page by clicking the coding instructions link, or you can do it through clicking the blue section headers inside the PMT. So when you're in the PMT in a different subsection, you can click on the blue section header and it'll take you directly into that section of the coding instructions. Just some pointers, the way the coding instructions are broken down, of course, you have your table of contents and you have your main sections here that are going to be the different tabs that you see within the Get With the Guidelines tool. But then you also have your subsections within that tool, so each of the different portions underneath that tab so that you can quickly get to the section you're looking for. And of course, once you click on one of the links, and I've shown you a long arrow here, it will take you to every single question that's asked in that portion of the PMT, and you can just click on that question. If you have questions about a particular question in the PMT, how to answer it, that's what you would want to do. You'd want to go directly to it inside of the coding instructions. Okay, and then very quickly, hey, I didn't know that. These are some quick things that you may not have known about your stroke registry. If you didn't know, there is a time tracker function. This is a hide show feature inside of your tool, but it has all kinds of different information about different portions of the TPA process. So maybe this is something you want to start tracking. There's a report that's also tied to this as well. So if you're wanting to use this to report out to your stroke team, this is where it's located. It's actually the patient time tracker report inside of your reports listing. You have an on-demand trend report. This goes back 10 quarters. It's a lengthy report. It's about 20 pages. So when you click this, it will just run all of your data over time to all of the achievement measures. And it's quite a lengthy report, so this is a great one to use. The patient resources that are built into the tool at the very bottom of your PMT, you'll also see there's some links to patient education, a patient letter, and a referral letter. If you are using your tool concurrently, these are really great to use. You can print out notes for your patient to take directly to their doctor, and it tells them all of their kind of basic pertinent information. I also like to point out the patient education. If you haven't seen these, let's talk about stroke patient education files. These are really great. You can click as many as you want, and then you can click Get PDF, and it'll put it into a printable format. You can print them right out and send them home with your patients. These do get maintained. They're always kept up to date through our partnership. And if you're getting asked by your surveyors during your stroke surveys, how do you know the education you're giving your patients is kept up to date? If you're utilizing these, you should know they are kept up to date, so that shouldn't even be an issue. That's a problem I've seen with some homegrown patient education tools at certain hospitals, so I just wanted to point that out. And I'm going to skip over that. If you ever are interested in utilizing our CSV uploader function, there is capability to do that as well. If you are interested in this feature to where you can have just data automatically uploaded and to Get With the Guidelines, you would need to reach out to your local QSI representative, and they can help you with getting set up on that feature. And I also like to show this. If you are not familiar with this tool, this is just a really easy visual tool you can use if you're ever explaining risks and benefits of TPA to a patient, or even if your physicians are wanting to explain it. I like this because it shows how sort of unlikely it is that you're going to have an adverse outcome to TPA based on the people that are in green and red. And if you wanted to, you could print this out and you could keep it handy with your TPA kit and your ER or whatever you want to do to make it easy to show. Mechanical reperfusion contents, if you're looking for measure descriptions, those are all, of course, found in here as well. Measure descriptions for all of our achievement measures. And that concludes my presentation. I'm so sorry, I just barely made it, and I apologize if we don't have much time for questions, Audrey. I'll let you tell me what we've got.
Awesome. Well, thank you for presenting, Allison. We now want to open the floor to questions. You can press *6 to unmute your lines or type in the Q&A section of WebEx. So, Allison, our first question we have, is there a separate fee for target stroke?
A separate key?
Fee.
Fee. Oh, fee. Oh,
yeah.
I'm sorry. No, target stroke is included. That's actually something that we would automatically look at no matter what. We consider all hospitals for target stroke if they are participating in Get With The Guidelines. That's a good question. That's a really good question. Our
second question, for the Honor Roll Award for TPA less than 60 minutes, how often is this award given?
That's an annual award, so it's assessed at the same time we look at your Gold and Gold Plus level awards. We would pull that data at the same time. All of our data is run on the calendar year, so January to December 31 is what we're looking at each year, and we will pull that data in March of the following year. So we usually will give you until the end of February to get all of your data in and solidified so that we can pull it for award recognition.
Another attendee asked, why is there no configurable measure report for hospital-acquired pneumonia? She said she was only able to get this data by data download.
That's a good question. I'm not sure if I have an answer to that, but possibly because it's not that's actually a great question. I don't know. I know we have it for dysphagia screening, and I kind of see what she's getting at if it was possible to look at how many patients are getting pneumonia based off of poor dysphagia screening. I think that's where she's headed. That's a great question. I can actually ask that of our national group, so I'll bring that up at our next meeting.
Another question, how long is the Get With The Guidelines training, and where would the training be held?
I'm not sure I follow. The Get With The Guidelines training, I don't know if there is a standardized one that is used. Most of the time I do one-on-one trainings with my stroke coordinators in the Houston area if they need me to. If you're interested in that, I would definitely reach out to your local QSI rep. They can always provide that one-on-one time with you. But I would venture to say maybe set aside an hour to two, maybe 2 hours.
The next question, is there an easier way or an explanation to see why a patient fell out for a measure other than reviewing the PMT entry?
Is there an easier way to see if a patient fell out for a measure other than, say that again?
Other than reviewing the PMT?
The easiest way I know of is the way I showed you, which is to go in and pull the patient list and then to filter out the records that didn't meet that measure. It seems a little tricky, I know, up front, but when you've done it 100 times, you're going to be an expert and you'll run in there and it'll be no big deal. I know it seems a little tricky, though.
Great.
Great question.
If there are no more questions, we would like to thank Allison one last time for presenting all things Get With The Guidelines. A couple reminders before signing off. Please note you will only be able to claim your CE credits at the end of the 15-week series on September 27th. And a copy of today's slides and any handouts will be sent to you within a week of today's call. Once again, thank you, Allison, and we'll see all of you next week.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Goodbye.